Hello, everybody. There's something that's been on my mind that I want to share today, and it's challenging to talk about. And I plan to have a further, I guess, more prepared message regarding this in the future. But I don't want to wait to share what I'm going to share. What I have to say is going to be a little bit sexually um, revealing, and so I guess just be prepared for that. But my heart goes out to people who think that they're gay, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about where something you might not have thought of that perhaps has led you to believe that. um, So, what I want to say is that sexual intimacy feels good. That's the way that God designed it. He created Adam and Eve, by the way, male and female, in the garden, and He gave them the mission to be fruitful and multiply, but He wanted them to multiply His images and likeness. He said, I created you in my image and likeness. In the image and likeness I have made you, be fruitful and multiply. And He put them in a garden where they were naked, and I'm sure it didn't take them long to figure out, because of the fact that sex feels good, that they figured out how to do that and how to have kids, and indeed they did. So it's normal. God wanted His people to multiply, but He wanted us to multiply a reflection of who He is, and not multiply sinfulness. Unfortunately, Adam and Eve, because they sinned against God, they ended up multiplying a sinful version of what God wanted. And He, much later, has rectified or came up with a means to forgive our sin problem through His Son, Jesus. But that's not necessarily something I want everyone to know, but it's not really what I'm here to talk to you about today. I'm here to talk to you today about how I think some people, with care and compassion, have been deceived into thinking they're gay when they're not, because of the fact that sexual intimacy feels good. Let me explain what I mean by this. Some people, when they were young, and before they really even knew what they were doing or what was going on, were experienced some kind of sexual intimacy. It may have been that they were introduced to it by someone who shouldn't have introduced them to it. And they maybe kind of knew something wasn't right, but it felt good. And although they may have had conviction about it, it's also tempting, because God created us to enjoy sex and to, because of that, help us to be fruitful and multiply. So let's say somehow you were introduced to sexual intimacy by someone of the same gender. And maybe even before you ever experienced any kind of sexual intimacy of someone from the opposite gender, which is the way God designed it, by the way, because a male and a female's parts go together for a purpose of procreation, but also God allows for and talks about in the Bible about husbands and wives enjoying sexual intimacy with each other. But let's say that's not how you were introduced to it. So someone, sadly, I don't want to say it in a harsh way, but corrupted something that God designed for good, and instead introduced people to sexual gratification, enjoying a sexual act, and it may have come through someone of the same gender. And maybe part of you, was treated wrongly, violated by it. It could have happened when you were young, or maybe when you were in your younger teenage years. But then, let's say even part of you maybe knew it was wrong, but you enjoyed it and it felt good, and then maybe you even participated in it again. And maybe it was partially the other person who initiated it, but maybe you didn't even turn away. Maybe you participated. You ended up enjoying something that God gave us to enjoy. That's part of God's design, and He gave us the orgasm. I mean, it's supposed to feel good, but it wasn't supposed to be in that way. It wasn't supposed to be that someone introduced you the wrong way. So now, as a result of experiencing gratification of someone with the same gender, what happens is you're starting to believe, well, maybe something's wrong with me, and maybe I am gay because I liked it. And because that's the way that you were introduced to it, you were led wrongly. You were introduced to sexual intimacy wrongly, and that's very confusing. And then now today, sadly, we are making behavior that listen, God calls homosexuality sin. He calls it an abomination. Whoever has told you, and I want to do this compassionately, but whoever has told you that God endorses in any way homosexuality, they're lying, and they just don't know. They're ignorant. Listen, I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor since 2009. Listen, I know the Bible inside and out. I teach the Bible every single day. That's not a lie. I teach every day. I'm teaching through the entire Bible right now. People who tell you something differently about homosexuality regarding it being permitted or okay by God because love is love, it's not true. It's a lie. They don't know what they're talking about. I don't say that to be mean. I'm just telling you the truth. Listen, look up my name, go on YouTube. I've given messages sharing lots of biblical reasons, and from a heart of God, I've done it with a loving heart, and you can find those on YouTube. You can find teaching about it. I'm not really here to teach you about the Word of God today and what it has to say about homosexuality. I've done all that before, and I'll do it again. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is how I'm sad that there are people who think they're gay because of two things. One, somehow something happened in their childhood that led them to a homosexual attraction, and in a sense it's not their fault. Something happened. They had a father wound. They didn't fit in. They were introduced to homosexual sex and then enjoyed it, and then thought as a result of all that they're gay. And then here's the problem. The problem is that the world is lying, and the world is telling people that this is totally permitted and celebrated and that this is something we should do. So then anyone who has had a dysfunctional childhood or something happened to them thinks now that they're created by God that way, and that's not. God does not create gay people. That's a total fabrication of man. But unfortunately now it's believed by so many. And because it's believed, then people who had something happen as a child that led them to have some kind of same-sex attraction thinks that because of the lie and the endorsement and celebration of culture, that then they should be that way and that God created them that way. So now the corruption or deception that they received when they're young is being fanned into flame by a culture that's teaching wrongly, and then people think they're gay. That's what's happening, and I'm very saddened by it. But I want you to know that you're not gay because you're attracted to sex of the same gender when you were introduced to it that way. Sex is meant to feel good, and that can fool people when they've experienced it wrongly early in their lives. So listen, a lot of people really need to assess their childhood, assess what happened that led to the belief that someone's gay. I don't believe, based on the Word of God, anyone is gay. I believe there's no one gay. I believe there are people practicing a homosexual lifestyle, and I believe that there are people that have same-sex attraction, but I don't believe anyone's created gay. I think what happened is Someone's exposed the wrong way. It misled them. And some people, listen, we all struggle with sin. You might struggle with being unforgiving. You might struggle with bitterness. You might struggle with gambling. You might struggle with alcohol. You might struggle with addiction. You might struggle with lust. There, every person, human being, is going to have a challenge in sin, and for some it might be the sin of same-sex attraction, and God can help you. He can, just like he helped me when I had a problem with gambling, many years ago, and I haven't been to a casino since the year 2000. So that's what, 24 years now. But God helped me. That doesn't mean that I don't think it would be fun, but I don't want the destruction of getting involved in gambling. I don't want to get back into that because it caused problems in my life. So why would I want to go back to what caused problems in my life? I don't. But that doesn't mean that I didn't get an adrenaline rush from it. That doesn't mean that in a fleshly, lustly way that I didn't actually have fun doing it. But it's wrong, and God has helped me to say no to something that's going to cause harm in my life, and I trust God. I trust God on what's good, and I trust God on what's not good, and He tells me clearly what that is, and I found my life to be so much better blessed when I walk in God's ways. But the lie is what needs to be challenged, because there's a lie in culture, and it's becoming invasive in culture, that people are created gay. And really what happens is that people are exposed wrongly. Something happened in their childhood, and I pray and hope that you'll evaluate what I'm saying. The fact that you enjoyed a homosexual sex act does not mean you're gay. That means you're human. It means that God created you to enjoy sex, but He didn't create it for people of the same gender. He created for you to have a husband or a wife one day, and to enjoy it in a marriage one day. That's what God designed, and He has not given up on you, and He still has a plan for you. And what it would take is, if you'll seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. I'm telling you what I'm telling you. Everything that I've said is true. Everything I've said to you is true. And if you'll just but seek the truth, you'll find it. Thank you for listening. May God help you. May God strengthen you. May God direct you to His good ways and to His truth. God bless you all.